Throughout its history, Nickelodeon has created some of the best original programming for kids. Some of these animated shows were so creative and popular that they went on to create long-lasting memories for an entire generation of viewers. That said, the network did run certain episodes that weren't so innocent or pleasant. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and these are Nicktoon episodes Creepy to Creepiest. Kicking off the list, we have SquidBob Tentacle Pants and SpongeBob SquarePants. In the Season 4 episode SquidBob Tentacle Pants, he checks out Sandy's transporting machine as he's getting ready for his shift at the Krusty Krab. He then asks her to transport him to the workplace, but somehow the machine malfunctions, and SpongeBob finds himself fused with Squidward. The mix-up causes Squidward's head to stick out of the upper left of SpongeBob's body. So the two of them have a lot of trouble carrying out their everyday task, while Sandy tries to work on a solution. They panic and continue worrying about the scary thought of staying like this forever. However, the episode gets even creepier towards the end. It's revealed that besides SpongeBob, Squidward gets morphed too with everyone around him, including Sandy, Pearl, Patrick, Mr. Crab, Larry, and Mrs. Puff. The flesh-colored blob produced as a result is creepy enough to make any child scream. Another very creepy episode on this list is Angelica's worst nightmare in Rugrats. For 9 seasons, Rugrats has given viewers countless life lessons on friendship while revealing the world from a baby's perspective. One of the most prominent characters in the show is Angelica. She's the oldest and likes to terrorize her cousin Tommy and his friends. While most Rugrats episodes are fun and harmless, there was one that creeped out the audience. In the Season 3 episode, Angelica's Worst Nightmare, Angelica's mother, Charlotte, realizes that she might be having another baby. The news comes as a shock to Angelica. She relished her status as the only child. Upon hearing about the possibility of a new baby in the family, she realizes that her parents will get too busy and won't pay her as much attention. Frustrated, Angelica goes to her room and mimics how her parents can't stop talking about the baby. She even falls asleep saying, "Babies, who needs them?" This is when she has a terrible nightmare, hence the episode's title.
Babies, who needs them?
The dream shows the baby already born. Although Angelica's parents are in her room, they fail to recognize her. When she goes up to the crib to have a closer look at the newborn, the baby starts speaking in a man's voice.
"I'm the new baby and you're the old baby, see?"
The baby also grows taller and threatens her by saying he'll teach her a lesson if she doesn't leave home, as she'd now be the old baby. In the nightmare, he even steals her food and chases her around the house until Angelica yells in her sleep. The entire nightmare scene can be horrifying for kids, and perhaps should have been toned down a bit, considering that Rugrats has a young audience. Next is Wrens Toothache in the Ren and Stimpy Show. The Ren and Stimpy Show ran on Nickelodeon from 1991 to 1996, and has been notorious for not being the ideal cartoon for kids.
"I smell something sticky."
However, one episode from the second season took things a bit too far. Titled Wren's Toothache, it shows that Wren refuses to maintain basic oral hygiene and ignores his toothache for a long time.
"I've never brushed before."
As a result, his teeth start cracking and decaying. As if the sight of his open mouth wasn't frightening enough, Wren is even shown plucking out his twitchy nerve endings. Next is the episode where Arnold visits Arnie in Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold qualifies as one of Nickelodeon's most popular shows, but not every episode from the cartoon series was sterile. The Season 5 episode, Arnold Visits Arnie, gives off some seriously creepy vibes, and you'll soon understand why. As the name indicates, this episode features Arnold visiting his cousin Arnie. What's weird about it is how his friends look remarkably similar to Arnold's. In fact, Arnie's entire life looks a lot like Arnold's, except that people here have much stranger personalities and behavior, which eventually freaks Arnold out. Finding itself in the middle spot of our creepometer is the episode titled Dark Harvest in Invader Zim. The title of this Invader Zim episode is enough to prove its place on this list, but there's one shocking fact about it that many Nickelodeon fans may not know. According to one MTV article, a convicted killer named Scott Dulesky once admitted that he got his inspiration from this episode. Ew. Dark Harvest is an episode from the first season of Invader Zim. It shows Dib scanning Zim with this brand new X-scope, only to find out that none of Zim's organs bear any resemblance to those of humans. Later, Zim gets to know about this alien nature of his. He then describes that in order to appear more human, he must obtain human organs. The episode actually includes a portrayal of Dark Harvest. Dib realizes that Zim has started going around the school, ambushing innocent schoolchildren by stealing their organs and replacing them with various objects. If this isn't creepy, we don't know what is. Next is the tale of the doll maker in Are You Afraid of the Dark? There's no way to sugarcoat it. This one's spine-chilling and should have never aired on a kids' TV channel. Here, Betty Ann narrates the story of a young girl named Melissa, who would frequently visit her Aunt Sally and Uncle Pete on weekends. There, she meets a next-door neighbor named Susan when the Henderson family moves into the new house. Despite being best friends with her, Melissa later finds out that Susan's family moved back to the city. But the story doesn't stop here. Curious to know about Susan's house next door, Melissa ends up exploring a strange, scary dollhouse that later had to be burned by her Uncle Pete. Also, it's later revealed that Susan never moved away. She actually disappeared in a horrifying incident involving the eerie dollhouse. Just outside the top 3, we have Zeke the Plumber in Salute Your Shorts. Speaking of petrifying sights, Salute Your Shorts definitely blurs the line between a cartoon and a horror show with its 3rd episode from season 1. It highlights one of the show's villains named Zeke, a plumber plus ghost who used to clean the toilets at camp and lost his nose in an accident. The only remnant was his toilet plunger that now bears a curse. Zeke's ghost likes to haunt other people's nightmares. This psychopath wanders around the camp looking for victims who touch his plunger. At first sight, Zeke's appearance is terrifying enough to creep out kids and adults alike. In the top 3, we have The Tale of Laughing in the Dare and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Another episode from this series that features chilling characters. Clowns have been utilized as a horror element in numerous scary movies and shows. But the sight of Zeebo, the petrifying clown in this episode, will send chills down your spine like never before. He comes out to haunt a young boy named Josh, who steals the clown's nose in a funhouse at Playland, utterly unaware of the terrible consequences. Landing in the top 2, we have The Graveyard Shift and SpongeBob SquarePants. Perhaps nothing comes close to this SpongeBob episode from season 2. When Mr. Crab forces SpongeBob and Squidward to work a night shift, Squidward gets bored and decides to scare SpongeBob. He told SpongeBob a made-up story about the terrifying hash-slinging slasher.
The slash-bringing hasher?
This evildoer was once a fry cook at the Krusty Krab, who accidentally chopped off his arm and later replaced it with a spatula. He was later killed and fired during his funeral, which is why his ghost now returns to the Krusty Krab every Tuesday night to seek revenge. Upon listening to this, SpongeBob starts screaming in horror. Squidward then assures him that the story was something he made up. However, later that night, the same events from the story begin to come true, signifying the arrival of the hash-slinging slasher. Finally, for the creepiest cartoon episode ever shown in Nickelodeon, we give that to the Puppet Master in Avatar: The Last Airbender. This Season 3 episode can be easily considered as one of Nickelodeon's most haunting episodes to date. When the Avatar gang visits a creepy village linked to several disappearing incidents, they come across an old woman named Hama, whose vibe is dark and terrifying right from the start. Later, the episode reveals how she's capable of horrifying things, such as controlling another person's body in a process called bloodbending. In fact, it's Hama who'd been causing villagers to disappear using her wicked ways. The scary woman even uses her creepy techniques to force Katara into submission, until the young waterbender becomes a bloodbender herself. Hama's evil intentions and her scary manipulating skills explain why this episode is called The Puppet Master. Alright, that's the list. Let us know in the comment section. Which is the creepiest Nickelodeon cartoon episode you've watched? Are there other episodes that deserve a spot? And tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.